Light it.
Welcome back to the Triple Option presented by Wendy's. Rob, Mark, Urban. We are joined by our longtime friend. You see him every Saturday with us on Fox's Big Noon Kickoff. Also works for The Athletic. Bruce Feldman joins us, our good buddy. Bruce, good to see you here, my friend. Bruce joining us, taking time away from his kids' vacation in Florida to hang out with the three of us. That's when you know you're a football blue blood. Let's talk about a topic that we were just talking off camera that you refer to as dense. I refer to it as vital to the future of college football. This whole NCAA, the power conferences, this landmark settlement of antitrust lawsuits. What's happening right now is it sounds like schools can distribute at least, Bruce, $20.5 million to their athletes starting the next school year, can expand scholarships to entire rosters as long as they stay within these new roster limits. There'll be a legal proceeding coming down April 7th where the judge will handle this House settlement. I guess give us a quick Cliff Notes version of where we are and why this is so important to college football.
Yeah, that judge had actually approved of this back in October, and now this is going to be a more formal hearing on the 7th of April. And that date you're talking about, where $20.5 million of a salary cap, that would kick in July 1st, right? And so it's really interesting because I think a lot of people had expected it going in all this direction, but it is, as I said, it's super dense because we're talking about a lot of lawsuits. We're talking about, I think, a power struggle. You're talking about a lot of politics. To me, the only thing worse than a lot of lawyers getting involved in it is a lot of politicians getting involved in it. And that's where we're at. It's ugly. It's messy. I was saying to Urban offline a little bit ago that some of the people I know and some of the people, he knows too, who I think are the most plugged in when it comes to the issues of NIL and roster management and all those things, because that's what they do. They're coaches, but they're not like on the field football coaches. And a few of them feel like the only way to really clean up a lot of the issues that are in the pipeline, because so much of this is going to end up with lawsuits and there's going to be more lawsuits. They think it may end up towards collective bargaining. And that's something that you just think, well, I couldn't see that in college athletics, but we're already at a place where so much stuff is happening in college athletics that Mark didn't play that long ago, but it's a completely different landscape than when Mark played.
Yeah. Hey, Bruce, there's been reports of a transition committee, and we've heard, schools' names, ADs from Ohio State, A&M, Clemson. But something I want to hit you with, and I'm one of the few guys, as I mentioned in the previous segment here. I was at the MAC, I was in the Mountain West, and then the SEC and Big Ten. And everything that I'm hearing is it's going to take cooperation. As I said in the previous segment, no chance when you start, this is the inequity. When you start seeing these committees, a transition committee, is that real, or is that just typical college babble that I've been a part for 15 years?
I think I think it's real. I just wonder when that expression, when the rubber meets the road, the Big Ten, which obviously we're at every week in the fall, and the SEC, these are the power brokers of the sport. So it comes back to, what does Greg Sankey ultimately want? What does Tony Petitti want? When you have the other two power leagues, the ACC and certainly the Big 12 is bringing in, I don't want to say half, but it's closer to half than it is anywhere near a level playing field with what the Big Two are generating. And so when we see okay, what matters most beyond the money with college football? It's the playoff, and how do you get teams in there? Right now, I feel like the Big Ten and the SEC on the front end so far have been pretty generous with what they've done, because I think they know, I don't think they want to collapse the rest of the sport. And I think that they're sitting there trying to weigh what's for the good of the sport versus what's in our best interest. I ultimately agree with you that what's in their best interest is not to be that collaborative. They're going to be collaborative, but I think they're going to, there's going to be some kind of what's in it for us that helps us here.
Hey, Mark, before I go here, Bruce, one more. I'm going to hit you right between the eyes with this. In the fall, the SEC and the Big Ten commissioners sat down to talk. Do we ever see succeeding the union here and say we're going to go 2 super conferences, add a few more schools, and go play ball on their own? And they got their own playoff. They have their own, and you're talking about, I just keep hearing this and the inequities that exist. Bruce, do you see that happening at all?
I do. I don't know how quickly we get to it, but like that's been the thought ever since we saw this massive upheaval. Like it wasn't that long ago where the Pac, I just saw Chip Kelly the other day and we were talking about he's going to work for Pete Carroll. We were talking about the old Pac-10 days when he was going up against his new boss, Pete Carroll, with the Raiders, and Jim Harbaugh's in the same division. And right now the Pac-10 is long gone. The Pac-12 is a memory. And I think because of all those things, what's the money going to be involved in? We see this in terms of what we work on and what gets TV ratings and what gets TV dollars. And if the money is driving it, I think it's going to get there eventually. It's just how quickly will it get there? The playoff, they couldn't make any significant changes unless everybody was 100%. They had a meeting the day before this year's national title game. It was, 2 or 3 weeks ago. That was not expected to be a lot of widespread change. When the contract gets turned over in a year from now, that's when I think you can see significant changes. But what you're talking about, Urban, and what I think a lot of people around the sport, inside the sport, think eventually it'll get to it. It's like what we see, like Rob, both you guys, Rob and Mark, you're very involved in international soccer and more on that space. And that's where it feels like it's going. It's become so much more professionalized. So why would they just be, dabbling and just kind of giving lip service to all this stuff? I think it's just a matter of what can they do legally where they're not going to get sued left and right. And I think that's the stuff they have to really sort out.
Now, Bruce, excuse my voice, long week. No,
Somebody had a good time in New Orleans. Bruce.
long week, man. New
When does he not have a good time? When does he not have a good time?
Valid point.
So this new settlement, right? So schools could pay their players what, $20.5 million? Is that like their salary cap?
20.5? Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
but it's not all.
Now-
but it's not all football now. I mean,
All
'cause there's,
sports, though.
a
All
big chunk.
sports.
I think it's a distinction. All sports.
All
So yeah,
sports.
a big chunk will probably go to basketball, and obviously a huge chunk will go to football. But it's not going to be all football.
and there will still be NIL.
Yeah, and so that's where I think you can have the the other part of this. What's tricky on this is
Like, will there be
so-
regulation of the NIL or?
They say there will be. But come on now. Like Urban, you coached in the SEC. Mark, you played in it. I mean, I was around it a lot when I did my recruiting book. There may be some regulation, but I think it's still going to be guys are super competitive. And that's just how it's gonna. I think that's how it's always gonna be.
Yeah.
Danny White, the Tennessee AD, we didn't talk a whole lot about it when it happened. A certain incident with a price hike that he did with his tickets. You read some of those tea leaves, and now looking back on that decision that he made, take us back to what he did and why you see that maybe as a bit of a preemptive move that more universities, frankly, are probably going to be doing.
Yeah, if they can do it. Danny White, the AD at Tennessee, back in mid-September, they announced that they were going to increase season ticket prices almost 5%, but they were very transparent and said, hey, the money is going to develop our team, which means we're going to increase NIL, and this is where it's going to go to, and everything else. And they have the leverage to do it. It's a fan base that it's not like it is when it was Derek Dooley or Jeremy Pruitt was there. They're rolling. People are excited.
And at that time in the season, they were really rolling, Bruce, right? I mean, there was arguably no program hotter in the nation than Tennessee at that moment.
But also, I know they got embarrassed by Ohio State in the playoff, but they did go to the playoff. And so if you can do this, and what was interesting to me was when I spoke to him back in September, right around the time of this decision, he didn't really make the distinction of NIL versus revenue share. I think it's a way where you're going to see schools, look, Urban worked at Ohio State. That is definitely a program that could probably leverage that. There's a handful. Mark's alma mater certainly could do that. The school I went to and Bear went to, Miami, I don't think they can do that. I mean, they have money, but I don't think they can say, hey, we're going to ask because the ticket base is not the same thing. So it goes back to the thing Urban said a couple minutes ago, where we're talking about the power leagues, maybe a superpower league. But again, there's not a lot of schools that can do it. Leinert's alma mater, I don't think they can do it. It's just the fan base is not that desperate. It's not that passionate. But for the ones who can do it, it is a big advantage.
I think the bottom line that we all got to remember, and I'm just going to keep saying it till someone proves me wrong, you need cooperation, and the chance of cooperation is zero. There's not going to be no cooperation unless it's the uppers against, because it's the inequities is so great. And once again, I'm one of the few people that can speak to, trying to go out and raise money for T-shirts and tennis shoes at Bowling Green to trying to figure out how to block the SEC D linemen. You're all in a fight, and there will be zero cooperation across the ranks of college football. It's the ups and the downs, the highs, the haves and have-nots, and I don't ever see that changing.
Are the have-nots getting a voice, Bruce, at all?
They technically have a voice right now, Rob. I think the question is going to come as we get a little further away. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if what we just had with the playoff, where you had an SMU, first year of the for being in the ACC at Boise State. I don't make the playoff, and that may be as good as it gets, though. Like, when it comes to the playoff, when it comes to things that fans genuinely care about, I think that those other things, like if you're, University of Houston and you're relatively new to the Big 12, you're on the hook for $20.5 million, for this. And there's a lot of changes. And again, the big difference between the Big 12 and the landscape that Urban is really talking about.
No, you said like the worst thing in getting lawyers involved is getting politicians involved. Like, will the NCAA have any power to like monitor and enforce spending? Like, or is this completely out of their control now?
I think the NCAA wants no part of being in this. I think they are so toothless right now. I think they're hoping to kind of get help, but I think they're kind of bending at the knee every chance they get. So no power.
So take out that crystal ball to that point. You're right. You're right. The NCAA doesn't want to fight anymore. They just keep backing up. So how much longer is the NCAA involved in major college football?
Great question. I mean, because technically, a lot of people don't realize this. It's not their national title game. It's not like college basketball or college soccer or whatever. I think they're trying to keep a hand in it as best they can, but they're really powerless. Their enforcement model is kind of screwy, and that's even up for reassessment now under new leadership. I don't know. It's a great question. I think it goes back to the thing about what we said with Urban, where it's just, hey, we may have a power league of
Super league
football teams. Yeah. And everything else, women's college basketball, soccer, baseball, all those things are still under the NCAA guidance. But this other thing is just too big and too strong for them to manage.
Yeah. The power players and the power brokers in the Big Ten and SEC are not to be messed with. And you can see these like incremental steps where they are taking the power and seizing the power and running with it. Bruce, as always, we appreciate it. Go spend some time with the kids. Don't forget to hit the bicep curls in the hotel gym, right? I know you hit those every once in a while, my friend.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah.
Come pull up on me, Bruce. You 20 minutes up the road.
I know.
Come bring the fam down. Come to the crib, man.
Would you say, Mark, pull up on me? Would you say?
Yeah, pull up on me. Pull up on the kid,
What does that
coach.
mean?
It means pull up, like get in the whip and pull up.
Go pull up on Brady Quinn while you're down there too with his
on your
84
treadmill,
children.
Mark. We're going to get somebody to come out to use your treadmill over there.
Love it.
Go down
Love
to the
it,
gym.
love it.
I'll take little man down to the gym to come get some work in.
Light it.